chordal guitar platform.
Ram badadam badadi bip bam radidi dagadi bop radadam bidam bam yadidi badidi yam radidai digadam biyadam ram.
If you study music, then you have to be prepared to teach music, and you must love teaching. Nowadays, teaching is as important as performing. The attitude that anyone who can play guitar well can teach well is nonsense. You have to train teaching just like playing an instrument. I'm Stefan Schmidt, and I've been a guitar teacher since I was 14 or 15 years old, so for a really long time. My goal is to have as much fun as possible with my work. That is what I want to do. At the end of each day, I want to have the feeling that the lessons I gave during the day have enriched me as much as possible. And if I then also have the feeling that I gave something to the students too, then I'm naturally very happy about it. For 10 years, I have also been teaching methodology and didactics at the Leopold Mozart Center in Augsburg. For about the same time, I've also been giving lessons at festivals, music academies and music schools about the possibilities of teaching, or the art of teaching. The student can come to me no matter what. As a teacher, I have to be the one who says, it doesn't matter what you bring with you, because I'll make something great out of it. It took me a long time to arrive at that sort of mindset. That the focus is on the work of the teacher rather than the work of the student. If the teacher is the one who is responsible for the success of the lesson, then teaching is much more fun. You have it in your hands and are no longer dependent on whether the student has practiced or not. The student comes in, delivers, and I am the one who can change everything. So as a teacher, I have to set myself a goal. Where do I want to be at the end of the lesson? Make yourself comfortable. Design your teaching in such a way that you enjoy every lesson you give. The first lesson is the Big Bang. It should start like a rocket, and the first lesson should be such that you can draw from it for a long time. This is one of the most important points for me. I must be able to control the pace of teaching and the pace of learning. How to ensure this is something that I have tried to optimize over the years, and which I believe that I am now quite good at. As a consequence of this, I can push a student forward unexpectedly fast. I want to be in control of time. I want to be able to control the progress as closely as possible. I am the one who, exactly at the moment when it is needed, slows down the pace of the lesson, sings along, becomes more insistent and goes backwards, or instead goes forward, makes it faster, increases the tension and spurs the student on.
Jawohl, jetzt sind wir auf dem richtigen Weg. Tam takadika ba am bim oder tam takadika ta am ping.
This is a completely different way of bringing intensity into the lesson. If you can control the time like this, you can actually change everything in that moment, at least in the optimal case. Of course, this doesn't work every time, but there's always an ideal behind it, and you try to get as close as possible to that ideal.
Mittelzeige, 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 Mittelzeige. Weg.
So I can change and control the music immediately, in the best case, when I have an ideal student. This is a point that is very important, that I am the master of time and have control over everything. If I manage to do this well, I can save a tremendous amount of time in class. Usually my students start getting lessons in the presence of their parents, which I also think is really important.
Was ich unglaublich wichtig auch finde. Wenn ich jetzt dran denke, wenn ich zum Beispiel die erste
For
Stunde
example, during the first lesson,
dann sitzt in der
usually it's
Mitte
the mother who
im
accompanies a
Unterrichtsraum.
child to class.
Hier sitzt das
The kid
Kind,
sits
hier
here
sitze
and the
ich,
mother sits
und die
either
Mutter
opposite
sitzt
or on the
entweder
right side next to the kid,
daneben, je nachdem,
depending on
wie
how
schüchtern
shy
das
he or
Kind
she
ist.
is.
Und
And
wenn
if
es
I
mir
manage to
gelingt,
get the
in
mother
dieser
to say during this
ersten
first
Stunde
lesson,
die Mutter so weit zu bringen, dass sie sagt,
wow, I have such a gifted child, I
das
had no
hätte ich
idea.
nie für möglich gehalten. Dann
Then I have
habe ich
created the conditions for
eine
this mother
Voraussetzung
or
geschaffen,
these
dass
parents who are
diese
there
Mutter
to
oder diese
actively
Eltern,
want
die
to
da dabei
support
sind,
their child.
ihr
That
Kind
is a
fördern
very,
wollen.
very
Das ist ein
important point.
ganz wichtiger Punkt. Sobald
As soon as you have
du es geschafft
succeeded in
hast, dass
getting a
eine
mother
Mutter
or a
oder
father
ein Vater
to want to support the
das Kind
child,
fördern will,
they will start thinking
machen
about
sich
how they
darüber
can do
Gedanken,
it.
wie sie das machen können. Sie unterstützen das, sie
They
hören sich
support
das
them,
an,
they listen to them play,
Gefühl,
they
dass
make
es
the
wichtig
child
ist.
feel that he or she is
Das ist
important.
ein Punkt, den kann man überhaupt nicht höher einschätzen.
I
als
can't
es ist
stress
einfach,
this enough. It is
es ist
incredibly
unglaublich
important
wichtig, dass
that
die
the parents
Eltern
support
das
their child.
unterstützen dann. Und wenn ich mir das im gleichen Atemzug gelingt,
And if I
dass das
manage in
Kind
the
dann
same
sitzt,
breath
was
to get the
sagt
child to say,
Gitarre spielen ist total einfach.
playing guitar is easy. I never knew it
Ich
was
habe
so
gar nicht
easy
gewusst,
to learn.
dass man das so leicht lernen kann. Also ich bin natürlich als Lehrer dann auch
I am then euphoric as a teacher
richtig,
because the student loves to
soll ich
play and the
sagen,
mother
als
is
Lehrer bin ich
absolutely
euphorisiert.
enthusiastic about her
Das ist
child.
vielleicht der richtige Ausdruck. Ich bin euphorisiert, dass der Schüler das gern macht, dass die Mutter total begeistert ist. Die Mutter
The mother
total
is euphoric
euphorisiert,
because the
weil
child
ihr
is
Kind
much more
viel
talented
begabter
than
ist,
she
als
ever
es jemals
thought
für möglich
possible.
gehalten hat.
The
Das
child
Kind
is
ist
euphoric
euphorisiert,
because
weil es sagt,
they
mein
thought there
Gott,
wasn't this massive mountain to
ich habe
overcome.
gedacht, es kommt
Instead it felt
Prinzip auf
quite
mich zu
easy.
und wir machen das jetzt. Und dann habe ich dieses
If this is the case,
Szenario geschaffen,
then I have
das
created a scenario
unglaublich
that pushes the learning process forward by a
Lernen nach vorne
lot.
pusht.
And that is the
Und das
point I
ist der
always try
Punkt,
to
den
reach in
ich
the first
versuche
lesson.
in der ersten Stunde immer zu erreichen. Und wenn man das so wirklich
And if you
immer
always try to do it
genauso
that way,
trainiert,
then you can do it reliably.
also wenn
If a
ein
student
Schüler
comes in for
reinkommt,
the first time,
ist
then
die
the probability
Wahrscheinlichkeit,
that
dass
they
er nach
leave
dieser
this
halben
classroom
Stunde
as a
diesen
different person
Unterrichtsraum
after this
verlässt
half hour
als
is
anderer
quite
Mensch.
high. And
Relativ
if I
groß.
really
Und wenn mir das
succeed in
wirklich
this,
gelingt, dann habe ich was geschaffen, was
then
mich
I
total
have created
stolz macht
something
und
that
was,
makes me very proud and that will
was
give an unbelievable
der
boost
weiteren
for my
Arbeit
further
natürlich
work.
einen unglaublichen Schub nach vorne bringt. Also wenn ich jetzt einen Schüler habe,
When you have a student who is playing a piece
ähm,
for the first time, many teachers
ersten
make
Mal
the
ein
mistake
Stück
of
spielt,
not
dann machen
only paying
viele
close attention to
Lehrer
the
den
notes,
Fehler, dass sie
but
darauf
also to
achten,
the rhythm.
dass die Töne richtig sind und auch der Rhythmus genau auf den Punkt kommt. Aber wenn ich
But
jetzt
when
zum ersten
I,
Mal
as a
als
professional guitarist, play something for the first time, say the first Tento by Henze, for example, or even nastier, the Sequenza by Barrier, or any other piece that is really hard to read, no one would expect me to play it from the get-go in the right rhythm.
im richtigen Rhythmus spielen. Sondern
Instead,
das heißt, ich
I play
spiele
the passage and then a
Passage,
difficult
dann kommt ein
chord
schwieriger
comes.
Akkord und ich mache
I
mir
imagine in my
Gedanken
mind,
drüber.
ah yes, that's how it works, and only then do I play on.
Jedem Kind
But many expect a child to play the rhythm correctly by sight, even if it is only a one-tone melody. For example, let's start with a two-string melody piece. We have two notes, for example, the G and the B string. At one point, the student has to think about which string will be the next. They wait, they realize how to play on, and only then they continue to play. And many teachers would try to get this rhythm played correctly. But actually, the right idea would be that the teacher allows the child to stop and think. Ah yes, that's the B string. And only then continue to play. This means that the child will not panic if they cannot continue playing right away. But if I don't give them a break, they get nervous when they realize that they cannot identify the next note in time. They begin to play unmusically, but if they know that it is not bad to wait,
Jam, pling, klang, 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 kling, lang.
then it is no problem at all.
Mittelzeige, 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 Mittelfeld zeige. Lang wir schon.
Great! It was not planned that she just made a little mistake. What became clear with Leni now and what I wanted to show is that I don't have to stop to correct her, but that I can correct this, for example, by a little assistance in movement. Or when I stop singing, Leni instinctively notices that she should correct something and starts to think. Then she's got the chance to find the solution herself and improve accordingly. I don't have to say, Index finger, Leni, the index finger is coming now. But I stop during the singing, and that is the signal for Leni to think, and she herself arrives at the solution, which is wonderful. And that also helps a lot to overcome stage fright. Everybody knows the situation when you are on stage and you have shaky fingers and there's a difficult passage coming up. You absolutely want to play it in the original tempo, the way you want it to be. That can be a problem, but if you have a middle ground that you can use to take the edge off, then the passage becomes much easier, but perhaps even more musical, because you can play it with confidence. The tempo of teaching is something that requires great skill. I have to work on it again and again. It has to be adapted so that the student has to make an effort, but can then achieve the goal.
Jawohl, jetzt machen wir schneller. Wam taka dam body tika da bam taka dam body tika dam bam tika dam body tika dam bam beaten ba bam. Jawohl.
If I have a highly talented student and I teach them too slowly, they get used to the slower pace of teaching, and I have a problem picking up the pace afterwards. If, on the other hand, the student is more of a slow learner and I teach too fast, I very quickly reach the point where the child is overwhelmed and gets tired. I always have to find the proper balance. If I believe that we could go faster, I have to increase the speed immediately and try to be more forceful. If I feel that the point has been reached where the student is overwhelmed, I have to reduce the tempo again and possibly integrate more relaxing approaches into the lesson. These are things you have to look out for all the time in the classroom. If the student has to think while playing, the teaching pace is automatically reduced. So I have to give them the opportunity to play intuitively, so that they are absolutely relaxed. At the first contact, I act like a sculptor who, for example, puts the leg into the right position, who checks the body tension, who positions the right upper arm. Usually you try to position the crook of the arm at the edge of the guitar string. It is absolutely vital that the student's posture is correct, and I can usually only bring forward a good posture if I work with a couple. So for me, there's absolutely no question at all that if I start the lesson with a student, I can make the lessons much better with a couple, even if they only have a small guitar.
Selbst wenn ich eine kleine Gitarre habe, versuchen das alles hinzukriegen, dass die Haltung stimmt. Probegriff, dass das alles passt.
For the listeners, the capo is enormously important because I can make adjustments here, for example. I can control the posture very well. Leni is a wonderful student with whom I enjoy working very much. This is the four-finger position we need at the beginning, We can also take off every finger at the beginning. I'm a teacher who employs physical contact with the students because it has many advantages. I can optimally control and adjust both hands and posture depending on how I need it. Whether I'm working with young children or adults for the first time, I think students should always start with a capo because I have a lot of advantages that way. For example, a capo is the property that the string action is lower, which makes it much easier to grip with the left hand. The capo is mainly there to immediately give the student a very relaxed position in their left hand. They can gradually train the tension in their left hand, depending on the fret to which I attach the capo. For the training effect, the use of a capo is ideal, and a student who has started with one usually has no cramps in the left hand. With students I have taken over from other teachers and who were trained without a capo in the beginning, I often have to work on the relaxation of the left hand over a long period of time, which is much more time-consuming than paying attention to relaxation from the beginning. Adults usually have very untrained and often very stiff fingers. Even with adults, the capo pays off very well. Without it, they usually exert too much pressure with their left hand. If, for example, there is a capo at the 7th fret, they only have to press down the string a little, and also close to the body and with less distance, and so they immediately have much more relaxed movements. Adults are usually also less agile and often put themselves under pressure when they start something new. And if you don't feel comfortable, then your first reaction is to tense up. And even while sitting normally, they often have the problem that they don't breathe properly anymore because they are so tense. With a capo, I can minimize this very quickly. I myself use Heinz Teuchert's Gitarrenfibel when teaching young children. But not because I think that it is the best book out there, but because I studied in Frankfurt and I know it inside out. I know exactly where its weaknesses are, or which things I would never do as described in it, and where I have to make changes. And it is important for me not to have to think about what comes next. Like I said, I teach a lot on the fly. That means that I change things as soon as I notice them. And when I have to think about what pieces are in the book and how I can use them in this case, that's something that slows me down. If I had to completely restructure my lessons, I would maybe work with another book. But I don't want to single out any others that might be better because, as I said, I work with the Gitarrenfibel mainly because I know it so well. I decide individually when I let the students start playing with their nails. There are students who never manage to play with nails because they have very frail nails or because they're nail biters. If I have students who already have very strong nails, at 5 or 6 years old, then I see no problem letting them play with their nails then. As soon as I feel that it could work, I start filing the nails every week, no matter if there are any or not. Then I say, for example, oh, unfortunately there are no nails, but maybe it will work the next week. Then I file over the fingertips for show and try to make it into a weekly ritual, because it has to be integrated into the children's everyday life. And maybe the next time they are biting their nails, they will remember that and go, oh, better stop. This is a topic that you always have to stick to, and eventually it works. With some children it works right away, and that is really surprising. If you have a 6-year-old who plays with nails practically from the beginning and can really put this into practice, then they will very quickly reach a level that is very different from their peers. Then I immediately have something special with the student. They are already playing with nails at the age of 6 or 7, they have fast fingers, understand quickly, and then everything goes incredibly fast. If I as a teacher would never try this, I would never be able to have this experience. You should always try out everything, even if you think it is impossible at that moment. There are so many children who are absolutely going to surprise you.
Okay? Ja, da, taka, da, ha, da, ba, da, bam. Jawohl. Genau. Und jetzt versuchen wir mal diesen Lauf. Ja, da, taka, di, da, ra, da, dam. Langsam zu beschleunigen. Wir fangen erstmal an. Bist du bereit? Dappen, badi, dicker, dappen, bieten, bam. Jawohl, nochmal. 1, 2. Radadaka, dappen, bieten, daka, dippen, bam. Jawohl. Versuchen wir mal. Einfach, lass es laufen. Ja, da, daka, dippen, bada, daka, dicker, dam. Ja, da, daka, dappen, baden, daka, dicker, bam.
Concentration and control. Concentration can also be learned in small steps.
Kleinteilig lernen.
For example, when I work with a student on a short passage, I can say, stop. And now let's try to play these 2 bars completely without mistakes. In this case, I even deliberately use the words without mistakes, although I usually don't like them much. But we're trying to see this as a sporting exercise at this moment. We try to move slowly and absolutely deliberately. You could say it's in super slow motion. Every finger is carefully moved and placed. You can use this as a concentration exercise. You can also use this in the opposite direction if someone is very tense and is constantly afraid of playing something wrong. You go, now play these 4 bars and try to deliberately insert a few wrong notes. Then we'll see the work will collapse. That would be psychological work, for example, which is sometimes very important. You force the student to play the wrong note or to play badly so that they get an understanding of what they can actually do. For example, some students have a wonderful tone and don't even know it. Then sometimes you have to force them to play really ugly so that they can realize, my God, look at what I can do. It's not that you always try to optimize everything. You can also sometimes, like a small child, destroy your Lego house with 1 blow. Play these 4 bars and I want to hear at least 5 wrong notes and 1 really ugly note. Because then you think about what's already there.
Radi-dacka, badi-dicka, dadi-dicka, bam-bim. Und dann C am Schluss brauchen wir noch.
You can practice control in many ways. By playing very slowly, for example, or by controlling the movement. If I now have a part of the piece that I want to play towards, then I play. I concentrate only on the increase in body tension, and then then please move without playing. This would be an example of how to control movement.
Hier wirklich, da geht's hin und dann geht's wieder zurück. Versuch diese Bewegung zu spüren, okay? Jawohl. Es gibt
I can't say, this is the way I always do it. Every student reacts differently to certain stimuli. That's why you try to come up with a cocktail of appropriate stimuli for each student. And that's only for this specific moment. It can be a completely different mixture the next week. You should be aware that all schematic thinking is actually incomplete. I constantly try to adapt, to change my teaching until I get the feeling that fits this student at this very moment. I don't assign homework. I never assign homework. The students play pieces and I make a circle around the corresponding number in the book and at some point I cross the circle out, but I never assign homework. When it comes to little kids, I say, playing the guitar is like brushing your teeth. And you should sit down once a day and pick up the instrument, but you decide for how long. When I have 5-year-old kids, for example, and they look at the clock and they're supposed to practice for 10 minutes, that's an incredibly long time for them. But when they know they can start and then finish practicing at any time, then they lose the fear of practicing. My experience is that the children then often spend more time practicing than when they are given precise time limits. Assigning homework, I think, is useful for someone who is starting to teach, for themselves and for their students. But for 30 years now, I have known exactly what the individual students are doing and how the situation will develop, and so I saved myself these 5 minutes of assigning homework, because in my experience most students never do it anyway, the parents aren't forcing them to. But I want a student to try to emotionally understand how such a piece works. And when I write it down, I necessarily reduce it to an intellectual exercise. In my experience, this has always proved to be an obstacle. When a 5-year-old student has to understand something intellectually, has to think about it, then it is often incredibly tough. But when the same student takes the guitar and tries to remember the feeling, moves with the music, actually doesn't know exactly what he or she is doing, but feels it exactly within themselves, then progress is much, much faster. Playing the guitar, playing any instrument has a lot to do with the question, how does it feel to make music? How do I play a phrasing? How do I want to represent the emotional content of the piece? But when I'm working with a beginner on how to do alternate picking and I know that the phrasing has to move towards a certain point, then I don't say imagine this as a distant point, because it distracts the student from the learning goal. But when I go, then I have a state of tension that I can increase and decrease accordingly. And this is something that students can understand much easier, that they have to tense up and let it go again. In my experience, this is a point that lets you reach the goal faster. If I were to say there's a mountain, you go up it and then down again, then the children often don't connect that with the music. They do later on, of course, when their skills are much more developed. Let's say I have a student who's trying incredibly hard. After a week of intensive practice, he comes to class and I sit there as a teacher and say, yeah, it's good enough, I suppose, and what else can you play? Then this is incredibly humiliating for the student. This example shows how important the psychological element is in teaching. This means that if a student comes to class and plays something to me and I think it's good, and you can always find something that's good about it, then I absolutely have to say it. You must be extremely respectful to the students. No matter what you ever get to hear from these students, it has to be absolutely clear that they are allowed to offer you everything they can. You are the one who channels their efforts. You're also the advisor, and you are the one who gives them space if need be. If a student develops trust in you, and if a student contributes something that is praiseworthy, then you have to praise that too and make it clear to them that you think that it's really great. It is also important that a student knows that you accept them and their personality. Then they will also accept when you criticize them. I have even my youngest students play for each other or play for their grandparents. That's why I always have to know when the grandparents' birthday is, by the way. It is important to play at school, to regularly have little concerts. Sometimes it's also enough if, in the presence of the mother, you suddenly go, "Stop! Now it's time. Now you give us a concert." Then you sit down, let them play, and then you, as a teacher, already have an impression of what works and what doesn't, especially in stressful situations. For example, if the student starts to shake, which interestingly enough hardly ever happens with children. If I have the students play in front of others a lot, they reliably will feel safe later when performing in front of an audience. What is important to me is not that I want to teach as many future professional guitarists as possible, but rather, at least that is my goal, that every student of mine sees making music as something important. That music accompanies their life, that they value it. Because I think that nowadays, as teachers, we not only have to produce professional guitarists, we also have to make sure that making music by yourself is seen as something special by the students. And that this realization remains with them. It's also possible that even the not so highly talented students amongst them love the guitar so much that they go to concerts later, for example. We have to make people really love the guitar, no matter if they are good, or if they are very good, or if they are top class, or if they can't play all that well. It's all about getting people to just play. And if someone comes to me and says he wants to learn to play the guitar, I don't care if afterwards he will only be able to accompany singing or if he will play the chaconne at a world-class level instead. It should be very important for every teacher to treat everyone completely equally. Because we need people who go to concerts, we need people who can perhaps later act as sponsors, we need people who organize. Of course, we also need people who play concerts, but we need the whole range.
I'm Nadia Jankovic and I'm a classical guitarist. Right now I'm studying in USA in Baltimore with Maestro Manuel Barrueco. Through my high school I worked with Professor Stefan Schmidt. The thing that I love the most about Stefan's work is that he let me be me and let my musicality to come out. He would listen to my ideas and they then shape them. And if they're wrong, he would explain me why. And he would always tell me never to lose myself. He cares about students' career and promotion, which is really important. And it's really a great honor to have such a teacher and a friend. And I'm grateful to his family and him for being there for me last 3 years. Thank you.
I was 13 years old when I started having lessons with Stefan, and his way of teaching was a real game changer for me back then, because it brought me from having this kind of vague idea of becoming a guitar teacher one day to actually getting some perspective on what is possible as a musician. I was always really impressed by his generosity and the way he devotes all his time and energy and knowledge to his students and really caring about every single one of them. He also taught me how important it is to set goals and to set them in the right way. He's also a real expert in knowing people, and he always knew exactly when the moment was right to give me this extra little push to get to the next level. And of course he always knows how to push. And yeah, I guess he's just one of the most enthusiastic people I know, and he also asks for this kind of passion from his students, and he expects them to play with the utmost musicality from the first note to the very last.
Weeping and shaking all over again. I've been wasting most of my days.
Way back in the day, Stefan used to be my guitar teacher for almost 12 years, I think. One of the main aspects of his teaching, at least what I consider to be important, is the ability to inspire and motivate people by absolute passion. What makes you finally start to believe in yourself and your skills. And this is where it all begins. Something you can't learn at universities and master classes. Either you got it or you don't. A gift. Much love.
Come to play.